podcast. Come take this walk with me.
Welcome back to the 3PLS podcast with your host, the Dr. Jason Branch, where we rediscover who we were, we embrace who we are, and we make room for who we're trying to become. On today's show, I got a guest for y'all. I'm telling you, and she bad. I'm talking about bad like Michael Jackson's sister, Janet. Bad, right? So I just met this woman this past weekend, at a conference in DC, and when she came in the room, everybody turned. In my opinion, my head turned because she was dressed to the nine in her own way, style, fashion, but it was her. The confidence was there, the poise was there. And when she got on stage, I was able to see the total package and I was intrigued. I was impressed. I was curious. And because of that curiosity, I was able to connect with her during her book signing after the event and just ask, would she be willing to serve on the show to talk to you all? So now you all get an opportunity to meet someone that I had the chance to meet that made an impression on me, and I expect she'll do the same for you. Ladies and gentlemen, Gators, salamanders, everyone else in between, I would like to introduce you to Rebecca Hall Allensworth. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you are here, professor at Vanderbilt, Harvard, Yale alum, Cambridge alum. Like, you the total package. You're the person that people talk about, but never meet.
Well, it's funny that you brought up my clothes as one of the first things you noticed, because there's a whole, if we're going to talk about who I was and who I am and who I want to be, my clothes are a big part of that. Yeah, so I got interested in like vintage stuff in college and collected things that I found, junking. It wasn't just clothes, also, it's jewelry and just other junk. Got interested in that. And I started to notice that I could get creative with the way I combine things and, feel more like myself, like dressing helped give me that confidence. I felt different if I liked the way that I looked, and I liked, importantly, that I was saying something with my clothes, something different about me. I like being different. Sometimes, like for a while there during COVID, I was getting pushed all these ads about, the work basics and, buy our basics. They're all black. They're super comfortable. And I was thinking, what algorithm is pushing these to me? I want clothes that are uncomfortable, that like maybe don't even fit me, so I have like now a very big collection of vintage clothes. I don't buy anything new. And I get a real kick out of combining them in creative ways. And the day that you saw me I'm actually very proud of this particular outfit. So I got the coat at a vintage store, and it's like this cool like denim coat with some embroidery on it. And then unrelated, I wore it a lot. It's a great coat. Then unrelated, I was in Mexico and I went to this just mall and I bought some jeans because I thought they were nice jeans. And I brought them home and I noticed they're the exact same color denim. Like you could wear this as a suit. And it's like my favorite thing because on the one hand, I was at a professional event wearing a suit because that's what you're supposed to wear. On the other hand, it was not the kind of suit that you're really supposed to wear at all. And so this is like my favorite thing to do with fashion, is to be wearing the thing you're supposed to wear, except if really it's not what you're supposed to be wearing at all.
Oh man, this hits home and on so many levels. And this is what I mean by being organic. I mean, you put a Dole or Chiquita banana sticker on both of our forehead because we are organic. Okay. So these moments and this is live for all of you, we didn't talk about this. This is just happening in real time. But what stood out to me is something that's valuable to you, where like you were intentional about it. You're not putting anything on. You are very intentional about it. And it's a story around it that connects to your experiences. Rebecca, you're another level. I just need you to see that. A lot of people
I'll tell you something else. When I get nervous about something, if I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing, I'll really do my outfit. And that was this conference because, I was there to talk about my book. I feel like I know licensing problems really, really well. I spent years researching it. The book is called The Licensing Racket: How We Decide Who's Allowed to Work and How It Goes Wrong. But this was a conference about mental health providers. Yeah, there it is. Yes, let's get the plug going. Right, there it is. And I know a little something about a couple of licensing boards, but understand I had to study dozens of professions to write this book. And so I love these conferences where I get to go and really kind of learn deeply about something I don't know about, but at the same time, it makes me nervous because I don't really know what the audience is hoping to get out of this conference. I don't know the hopes, dreams, and motivations of the people in a conference like this. Is not my professional community. So I wore my very best outfit, or at least I won't say I have any favorites, but I had to go like, you know.
It got you on a podcast. I just need it got you on this podcast because that was the first thing I noticed. And this was in passing. I didn't even see your frontal. And this was in passing. You just walked by me. And I'm like, who is this? She's somebody. I didn't know who. I just knew you were somebody. And that speaks volumes to who you are as a person. And I'm proud and I'm impressed. And I hope you can give some of us, some of the listeners, that energy. So I mean, I'm curious because I'm hearing two different worlds of, you dress to the nine because you know I'm confident here, but I've never been in this environment before, but I'm gonna go and do it anyway. So where did that, confidence in, it sounds like there may be some identity, like imposter syndrome, possibly, like maybe
Oh
I'm not
yeah,
supposed to be
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So
I'll
I'm
own that.
curious, how are you having that with your pedigree? Like from all the education and what you do and where you are, how are you battling imposter syndrome and overcoming it, especially to do what you've
Well,
done?
because imposter syndrome is not treated by or overcome by more prestige. In fact, I sort of think that more prestige tends to bring on worse imposter syndrome, right? Because
Ooh, you gotta tell us about it. You
you
gotta
know, well,
tell.
I walk in here and you say Yale, Harvard, and Cambridge, and she's now you've built me up on this pedestal, and it's like I better not have something in my teeth, and I better know exactly what I'm talking about all the time. This is a lot of pressure. Um, but you're right. No, you have it right. I have my internal life and I have my external life, and I see my mental health, since we are, this podcast is on some level about mental health, my mental health journey being about like reconciling the idea that those things aren't exactly the same. That like I don't have to always feel the way that I'm projecting. And sometimes it's a useful skill to be able to project something that you're not feeling. And, then that's a coping mechanism that one uses in professional life, especially. Um, as long as you have that self-knowledge that like, oh, that part of you that's feeling insecure, oh, that part of you that's feeling like the pressure, that part's okay. It's okay. That's never held you back in the past. It's never gotten in the way of you walking into a room and looking like $1 million. And then I think the other thing is like you got to know yourself that way. And also you have to have relationships with people that are just truly authentic. Not every single person in your life, it's not going to be that way, but my husband, my best friend, my dad, maybe my kids, they're a little young to really know me as deeply as
Yeah.
those people do. But with those people, they see all of it. They see the imposter syndrome and they see the successful Rebecca Allensworth that's out there in the world too. And both things are real.
Wow.
But
So I'm curious because you don't have to be this person, especially with what you've experienced, what you've seen, what you've done, because you know those individuals, their colleagues and everything else, but you're not a part of that. Like you seem to be an outlier based off of, your educational background where you are now. And what I mean by outlier is your willingness to be authentic, your willingness to just show up as you and not really worry about what people think or feel, whatever. It's like I'm just gonna do my best. How did you develop that and maintain it, especially as you've climbed the ladder in so many arenas? How have you been able to maintain that? Because it's not the norm from my experience, it's not the norm. So being an outlier in these spaces, how do you maintain it and not lose you in it?
yeah, again, I think it goes back to just liking myself and surrounding myself with people that like me. And I'll say that my colleagues really get a kick out of me. So, okay, I'll give you an example. Um, I I was presenting for a colleague for the 50th anniversary of this case that he's involved in. Okay, so this is a older gentleman,
Uh-huh.
but I did the math wrong and I dressed in a 1950s outfit. Okay, and I got up and I started explaining about how I had, and this is in front of over 100 people. Media is there. Okay. And I started explaining about how I'd picked this outfit just to coincide with the 50th anniversary because this is from the 50s. And I go through this whole thing and then I sit down and I realize, no, no, no. The 50s were 70 years ago. First of all, this is not the 70th anniversary of anything. Also, my poor colleague would have to be 100 years old for this to be true. I've just called him like 100 years old. So then I had to get up and backtrack about the outfit that I picked out. Anyway, my other colleague said this was his favorite memory of me, both in the way that I dressed to coordinate with the occasion and in the way that I screwed it up. And
Wow.
I do feel like very accepted for who I am. But another part of the answer to the question is that like I didn't always used to feel this way. So I would say that the hardest time that I had maybe was in law school, where being different, even down to like wearing different clothes, is seen as I don't know, the social environment of law school is an awful lot like middle school. You know, it's like um, very conforming, very competitive. And I had two parts of myself there too. So on the one hand, I felt like a clenched fist. I was coping. I was wearing the same outfit every day, these black pants and Crocs. Okay, so opposite of my fashion situation now. I was just holding on. And
Yeah.
I was experiencing like, some anxiety and some depression. And I was doing really well in school. I
Mm.
was and loving it and
Yeah.
learning so much and just, killing it. And
Yeah.
I think that part of how I have ended up the way that I am today is that that experience helped me see that I could be really struggling on the inside and then in some ways on the outside because, I think it was obvious that I wasn't like super happy and achieve like great things and learn a lot. And so that made me feel like I don't have to, I don't know how to explain this because, of course, you want to be happier, and I am much happier than I was back then, but it wasn't like so scary. It was
Mm.
like, okay, I can get through my days. I can learn a bunch. I can like move forward in my career. I can get really excited about ideas, even when I don't feel very good on the inside. And I think that
Mhm.
that kind of like acceptance of that part of my personality and that self-love, I guess, is what, people who use the term say, helped me become who I am today.
Yeah. So I'm curious because everybody don't just show up like this and learn this. Like you seem very intuitive and self-awareness and self-discovery. Like this, I know that didn't just fall out the sky. Where did this come from for you to be so intuitive, even then, in the middle of that, and being able to see it from a
Yeah.
lot of different perspectives?
I mean, so therapy in part, I've been in therapy for a long time, various different kinds of therapists. I think that was also helpful. But again, like people who people who love you, relationships that you develop along the way. There was a way in which the crucible of law school forged some of my strongest friendships because there was a small crew of us that I think all felt a little bit on the outside, and they're still my closest friends from law school. And in some ways, I'm closer to them than a lot of people that I knew when I was young. I think in part because of that experience. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, so I just think relationships are a super important part of it.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. So I want to go back in time a little bit. So because you are a unicorn to many people, me specifically, I'll talk about me. You're a unicorn because as I mentioned, people talk about those who go to the Ivies and you went, you three, and you're still authentic and human and like it's so rare. From my experience, it's so rare. So I'm curious, the origin story, what made you decide to go into law, and then what made you decide to choose the Ivies to do that?
Yeah, so that's a really good story. So I guess we'll start with the first Ivy, which was Yale for undergrad, and I was so competitive. It's one of my favorite things about me. People say that like it's a pejorative, but man, and I'm an antitrust professor, so I love competition. I loved being good at stuff growing up. I loved, so I did well. My parents were encouraging, but kind of hands off, they're like, it's your thing. So I just wanted to get into the best school. And then I decided that I actually preferred, normally you'd think that's Harvard, right? I actually thought that I preferred Yale. Yale was better to me. So I got into Yale. And then I started and I realized I started as a physics major because I was very good at math and science as a high school student.
Mhm.
And I was insecure about my writing. I was not a great writer. And then I got there and I realized, oh my God, everyone here is just as smart as me. smarter, and boy, this physics class is hard. I'm not the only girl who can do math anymore. What's going on? And so I did badly in that class, and I decided, sort of out of desperation, to take an English class the second semester. I wrote a couple papers. They were bad, as sort of fit with my narrative about myself. I'm a bad writer. Went to the professor and said, how can I do better? He said, writing kind of can't be taught. You have it or you don't. Sorry.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
then gave me an A- on my next paper. And I thought, oh, right on. Okay, maybe I can get this figured out. I got C's on the first two.
Yeah.
And he promptly accused me of plagiarism. So he said, there's no way you could have written this paper.
Wow. Wow.
So that's a whole long story how that turned out. But the upshot of it was that I majored in English and writing as revenge. I was going to show him that I see that's the competitive side of me, right? It's like, no, no, I'll show you. I'll show you because I'll be an English major. And if I'm an English major, I'll have to learn to write well. And
Mm.
by the end of grad of undergrad, I was getting A's and B's. I was getting some good grades, but I was still, just kind of doing okay. It was fine. I didn't feel like I was a great writer. I didn't really feel like I had a future in it, but I had made progress. And I had this teacher who thought I was great. She's one of the people who gave me an A. She said, you should do this. You should be a professor. You should go to PhD in English. This is what I do. You can do it. And I was a little confused because it was like, doesn't she know I'm not very good at this? Doesn't she know that but I did it. I applied to grad programs and I didn't get into any of them. And I was disappointed, but I was interested in pursuing it. And I ended up, um, reapplying at least I applied to a different master's program. That's how I ended up at Cambridge. And then I had this other professor at Berkeley say, if you want to be a professor, you should go to law school. And that
Mm.
was the first I thought about going to law school. It was really like not about law. It was about wanting to be a professor. And she was very pragmatic. She's like, they make more money. Okay, there's more jobs than English professors. And you got a good plan B. You got a JD. If you want to do something else, you get a JD. So then I was kind of off to the races.
Mhm.
Um, I got into Harvard. So why Harvard? So, if you want to be a professor, you really do better if you have the highest credentials. And again, it's very competitive. And I admit I liked the look of a Yale undergrad, Harvard grad, so I pulled that off and I did very well in law school, like I said. The crazy thing is that I was at graduation, Vanderbilt graduation,
Mhm.
3 weeks ago.
Mhm.
Um, and I had this student that I gave her the best grade in the class. She's like really smart. And I was having this very standard interaction I have every graduation with a bunch of parents where I'm saying, your daughter's so bright, you're so lucky, she did so well in my class, congratulations. And I was talking to the mom and the dad, and the mom starts talking, and I realized it was that professor from Yale who believed in me, who gave me the A, and had like started my whole career. And she was here, a parent of one of my students 25 years later. So that was actually why I agreed to be on your podcast, honestly, because I had been really thinking about who I was and who I am and how she like bookended that. She saw me back then and she saw me now. And I just have been thinking a lot about that journey. So I kind of wanted to share that story.
I'm so glad you did. You told me you would. I'm glad it just happened organically. Again, that's what this show is. And I don't believe in coincidences. I believe everything happens for a reason when it's supposed to. And it's how we view it. And you viewed it at that moment of, oh my God, here are three parallels. Who I was, who I am, who I'm becoming. And then all of a sudden you meet me and I'm talking about three parallels. And it's like, oh my God, what is this? What is this? And this is what it's supposed to be. And what you're sharing for so many people that's listening, they are now given a breadcrumb. I call things that's hidden in plain sight breadcrumbs. And if you eat enough breadcrumbs, you're going to end up with a slice of bread. You eat enough slices, you're going to end up with a loaf. You end up with a loaf, you're going to get hit in the head with a honey bun because that's how we do on the show. And I feel as though, with your journey, your experience, it allows us behind the curtain, meaning you are sharing your authentic story and it's human. And a lot of people don't consider humans with the level of prestige or professionalism that we have. We forget that people are human. And I really appreciate you sharing that human story. So speaking of human, I want to switch gears to a little rapid fire questions that connects the dots to this because you've been everywhere. You traveled, well educated. You've been a lot of different places, but you never lost you. Here's an example. I just found out you from Oakland. You got the Oakland A shirt on. Again, you right. You never left you, right? So I'm curious to know, out of all these years, what would you say? Kind of twofold question. What have you learned about yourself from then to now, and what have you learned about other people from growing up to where you are right now?
Oh, about myself. Gosh, that would be a very long list. So I really like spending time alone. That's been a difficult thing to do as a parent. And I, it's just my kids are 7 and 9, and so I'm sort of constantly either I'm working, it's my only time alone. But that was a journey to really realize that I really wanted more time alone than most people. And that was okay. It was okay to like want to go out to dinner alone. It was okay. It wasn't weird, just because nobody else was doing it. That's something I've learned about myself. Yeah. And then what have I learned about other people? That like other people are whatever feelings you're having. Maybe you're feeling, sort of insecure. Maybe you're feeling like anxious about something. Other people are probably feeling that too. If
Mm.
you feel like you're pretending that you know this thing, other people are probably pretending too. So when people say, I talking about some law case that they're saying that they read or whatever, they probably skimmed the introduction just like you. You know, everybody's, I guess it's like picture everybody in their underwear, it's like everybody's in their underwear. That's something that I feel like I've learned about other people. Yeah, I think that those are the observations that I'll make. Yeah.
I love it. Again, these this is game changing. I don't know if you know that. It's simple for you. You live this life. You're letting us in. You're letting us learn about it. And again, you're simplifying things that we view to be complex. And I would agree with you 100%. Like that's human. That's human. We can't know everything. So I'm in this position or in this space where I perceive that I have to, or I think that I have to prove that to everybody else. I don't. But a lot of us don't know that, and especially don't talk about it. So speaking of that, I'm curious to know, is there a word, phrase, memory, or moment that has stuck with you personally or professionally?
Um, Word, phrase, memory, or moment. Um, yeah, okay. This is a memory or a moment, but
Okay.
when I was in law school, I had the opportunity to interview to be a clerk for Judge Posner. Richard Posner was a judge on the Seventh Circuit, and he's one of the most famous appellate court judges, and this is a prestigious thing that was gonna, be the next um, step in my sort of journey of becoming a professor. And it was just really unexpected that I would get this interview. And it would be a really, really big deal if I got it. And I was really excited about this particular judge just because of how creative and eclectic and fearless he is about what he writes about, and also because he's such a wonderful writer. And I was really at that time still very much on this journey of like, I need to never stop learning to write better. Anyway, a consequence was that I was so nervous. And back then, one of the only things that could calm me down, and it's still true today, is music. Just like, and I would have a few songs that were almost just like a security blanket kind of thing. And this is relevant to the surrounding yourself with people that love you. My friends knew I was so nervous about this, my law school friends. And one of my friends put um, it was the iPod Shuffle back then, in my mailbox with a little post-it note that said, "You got this." And he had loaded all these songs and, albums on there that he thought that I would enjoy listening to. And I listened to it on the airplane, I listened to it in the cab, I listened to it walking up to the building. And as I was walking into the Seventh Circuit building in Chicago, Penny Lane came on, by the Beatles.
Mhm.
And I was just like, it's going to be okay. It's just going to be okay. The song is just, I still associate that, like that thing that only the Beatles can do. So that's a memory that I thought of when you asked me that question.
Thank you for sharing the memory. Thank you for sharing the breadcrumb. And here's the connection. Here's the connection. This podcast has a playlist.
Oh
And
yeah,
now
right on.
Penny Lane will be added to that
Penny
playlist
Lane. Yeah.
dedicated for you. If it's not on
Yeah.
there already, maybe there.
It's
But
just
if
the
it's not,
sound of that track is like the sky is just opening. You know, the clouds are parting and it's like total serenity to me. I don't know if other people experience it that way, but that is what that song sounds like to me.
beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for giving us you. I am curious because I want to go back to the book and the interest, because I've been, in the mental health profession 20 years, and I've never heard anybody speak about this publicly or even wrote a book about it. And not just within the counseling profession, but all professions that require licensure. So I'm curious what made you curious about that, and then to dedicate time, energy, resources to study it to give us what you've been able to produce.
Yeah, so I think I said I was an antitrust professor, and one of my antitrust professors that I had in law school got in touch with me after I became a professor and said, it's always bothered me that the professions get this kind of free pass under the antitrust laws. We should write a piece about it, and we should say that the licensing boards are kind of like cartels. And I did the research for this and learned that most of the licensing boards in the US are dominated by members of the profession themselves. They're deciding who's in, who's out, and kind of the terms of competition. And they basically are cartels. Moreover, there's a legal argument that they could be sued under the antitrust laws that make cartels illegal. So I did all that work. That case was cited by that article was cited by the Supreme Court. So that was great for me. Pre-tenure, got a little Supreme Court citation. And then I wrote 2 more articles. And by that point, it was like, well, if you've written 3 articles, you've almost written a book. But
Mm.
instead of taking my research to that point, which was all based on cases and law review articles and databases, and turning it into a book about licensing, I wanted to see, well, I've been kind of bad mouthing these boards all this time. I haven't been to a single board meeting. What happens if I just start showing up? What are they really doing? Like, take a little peek. Like, what are you really doing in there? Um, and it's cool because Nashville is the capital of Tennessee, so that means that like dozens of boards meet here, and on any given day, there's probably a board meeting going on. And this very much appealed to my kind of like, I'm just going to show up, now this is an example where I did not wear my funkiest clothes. Okay, I wanted to be a little bit more under the radar, so I had to get some basics, or at least find some basics at Goodwill for this one. And like I show up with my little notepad, and I started seeing stuff that I thought was crazy, and only some of it was crazy in the direction uh, that I expected. Only some of it was too much regulation, kind of the cartel thesis about suppressing competition. A whole bunch of what was inappropriate was actually about too little regulation, really. Professions letting their worst, most abusive members off the hook, and letting them keep their licenses. So then the book became, I think, much deeper and more interesting than my research had been to that point, because I showed up and I did this kind of qualitative empirical study of boards.
Wow. Wow. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. I appreciate you for what you've done, the work that you've done. You're highlighting, and I would agree that the term cartel. And as I asked at the conference, you can't say cartel without the money piece. And that's a part of it. So you were able to dive into places and spaces that, in my opinion, no one has done. No one has had the interest or care to look into it, but we're all impacted by it if you're in a professional career that requires licensure. And it's a struggle for me, and I shared it with the listeners, and we talk about it here, and it's not changing, or it hasn't changed, and it does cause some discrepancy within our profession, and it's a contradiction in so many different ways. So I love that you did this work to give us even more insight without us having to do all the work that you've done. You did it for us. So by you doing all the work, we can look at what you've done, what you've studied, to get a better understanding to help us in this whole journey. So I really, hats off to you. I commend you for all the things that you've done. I am curious, if you don't mind sharing your some interesting facts, whatever you want to share, how much you want to share, interesting facts about you, again, humanism, that most people don't know anything about. Outside of the pro tip of the goodwill, outside of that, what are some things that's unique about you or interesting that people don't know?
I used to be really into motorcycles. I was in my early 20s. I had a GS 500 and
Wow.
um yeah, it was actually so after I didn't get into grad school, I started to find ways to I don't know, compensate, I guess is the word. One of them was to get a puppy, which was
Okay.
a great decision. And she was my best friend and at my side through all of this, through law school, through the clerkship, meeting my husband, moving here to Nashville. She was even around when I had my first baby. So that was a great decision. Around the same time, I got a motorcycle, which actually is a really bad thing to have with a puppy because you can't carry the puppy on the motorcycle. But also had a car, so it kind of worked out. And I was even in like a little motorcycle club at UC Berkeley. So, some might say a gang. I don't think of it as a gang, but it was really more like just a motorcycle club. It was not a gang. So that's
Hey,
a
listen,
little
I
fun
understand. You
fact.
got a reputation to keep. I understand. I
It
understand.
doesn't really jive with my personality now, so people are usually surprised by that.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I think that's a fun fact about me, that's little known.
Okay. All right. So the big question, if you could describe, and you gave us some pieces, because every guest I want to ask this question, how would you describe who you were, who you are, and who you are becoming?
Well, I've always been competitive. I was competitive. I was really interested in being different from other people. I think I both craved being different, but also found it hard. Like I remember I wore a hat to middle school, the first day of middle school, and I got mercilessly teased for it. And so I was both wanting to be different and also like really anxious about being different. I think that who I am now, still really competitive, still really wanting to be different, wanting to set myself out from everybody else. A little bit more comfortable with the being different part. Although there's that middle schooler is still in me sometimes. When I feel like I'm getting attention for being different, I feel a little mixed about it. Um, and another thing that I am now is a parent. That's a really big part of my identity, and I'm a role model for my kids. And I don't mean that in like a good way. I mean like I have to constantly be worried that they are seeing who I am. And sorry, somebody just knocked on the door. Now my dogs have come in here barking. Um,
No.
yeah, being a role model is a little bit scary and it's a lot of pressure. And like I know that they're looking at me to see how you do things. It's also not something that you can get better at by working harder. That's been a lesson for me. I've, obviously always gotten better at things by working harder, and that's really, hold on just one second.
No problem at all. This is as real as it gets, y'all.
I'm in the middle of taking a podcast. Yeah, so being a parent is a big part of my identity. Um, and like I said, it's not something that you can get better at by working harder. And I think when I want to answer the question of who I'm becoming, that is the parent part of it. Like I'm really thinking a lot about what the next phase for my kids is going to be like and what that will be like as a parent. My kids are 7 and 9. I don't know if I said that earlier, but I've gotten really interested in teenagers. Like I just see them in the world like creatures in an ecosystem, and I'm just watching them like, what are they doing? What are they talking about? How do their parents feel about this? You
Yeah.
know, what makes them tick? What makes them happy? What makes them, fearful? What activities are they doing? I'm just kind of obsessed with the with teenagers and their parents right now. I'm thinking a lot about my role as the parent of a teenager. So yeah.
Wow, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And the last thing, question is more of a call or a challenge to the listener. So on this show, as a professor, I don't give homework. Okay, I'm a therapist. I teach in the master's program. We don't do homework because homework, you take it home, you do it, you never remember it. Life work is what we offer here. And life work, when you do it, it creates a shift or a pivot. So if you can offer something to the listeners to help them consider shifting or pivoting, what would that be?
What can the listeners use to shift or pivot? Yeah, I mean, change is an important part of life. It's an important part of my life. I don't know. I mean, I think,
Here's I want. You mind if I help? You mind if I
yeah,
push?
please.
Okay, I got you back. So you are a risk taker.
Yeah.
Calculated. Calculated. Don't get me wrong. It's calculated, but you are willing to do the things because a lot of these stories you share connects to courage and taking risk. So
Yeah.
how could you help the listeners with being more open to consider taking more risk and being more courageous like you've been? Because every time you've done it, it served you in a major way.
Oh, yeah, except the times that it failed. I mean, I don't talk about that, right?
Nobody does.
I mean,
Nobody.
except that I did allude to not getting into grad school, so that I mean that's something. Uh, but yeah, I mean, I think that like that's that is an overarching principle behind who I am and what I do. I take a lot of risks, and I think that like the Wayne Gretzky thing, you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. I think that by not taking risks, you are just holding yourself back, and I think that like that is a good way to change is to take a risk. And like, what's the worst thing that could happen? What is the absolute worst thing that could happen? For me, when I was doing the research, I asked a lot of people for interviews that really probably didn't want to be interviewed. And 80% of them said no. And that was the worst thing that happened was they said no or ignored me. And it was an awkward moment and then you move on. So yeah, I think having a solid base, again, of people who love you around you and love for yourself, the thing that can go wrong is really not going to be that wrong.
I love it. I love it. Dropping gems. Thank you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being here, taking your time with us today because you are busy, booked and busy, I would say. So I really appreciate you spending time with us. And my hope or my expectation is there is at least one thing that was said that somebody got that can cause them to pivot, cause them to shift, to begin living life differently based on the stories that they hear of other everyday people. And sometimes we forget that we all are everyday people. We get caught up in the things that we do, and it takes away from the truth of who we actually are. So thank you for
Yeah.
spending time with us. Any final words, final thoughts, anything you want to share, products you want to offer, services, your book, please promote it. This is the time, this is the space. So dive in.
Yeah, I mean, everybody should get the book. It's a great book. I'm very proud of it. There's lots of things that I maybe have some imposter syndrome about, but I'll tell you, between the books, the covers of that book is something I really believe in and I feel so proud of. So I hope that you'll read it. It's fun to read. It's maddening. It'll make you angry. It'll make you a little concerned, maybe more than a little concerned. But it's really told in a sort of narrative, engaging way. So I really hope you guys enjoy it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Again, thank you for blessing us with your presence. If this episode has been helpful, beneficial in any way, shape, form, or fashion, give it away, share it, talk about it. Hey, I met this professor. This is maybe the first person you ever meet that went to Harvard, Yale, and Cambridge, and still as authentic as she can be. So, this has been another episode of the Three Parallels Podcast with your host, the Dr. Jason Branch, where we rediscover who we were, embrace who we are, and make room for who we're trying to become. I would offer you all today to do something different. Doesn't matter what it is. Do one thing new, different, and or uncomfortable.